Welcome back to the channel. I hope you've been enjoying the videos. I've been enjoying making them. In trying to come up with a topic that I wanted to talk about for this particular video, I thought about the fact that I've been outside the United States and I've met people from, obviously from other countries at that point in time, because I was outside of the United States. In talking to people and finding out what they knew about the United States, most people outside of the United States, they view, and I'm sure that each country has this to some extent. I mean, the United States, it's in its name, we are the United States. So there are states that are united together to form a country. In the case of the United States, there are 50 states. Now, in talking, like I said, in talking to people outside of the country, you know, different countries are divided up in different ways. Provinces, states, cantons. Anyway, there's a ton of different ways that countries are divided into geographical and political zones, if you will. A lot of times those will each have their own government, their own capital, what have you. So in talking to, as I said, in talking to people outside of the United States, they know that there are 50 states most of the time. Sometimes they don't necessarily know that, but for the most part, people understand that, or I shouldn't say they understand, but they know that there are 50 states. However, if you were to ask them to name some of those states, there's about 4 that people always get. New York, California, maybe Hawaii. Hawaii tends to be a pretty, pretty big tourist destination, and so there's people know about Hawaii. And then there's Nevada, obviously because of Las Vegas. But the rest of the 50 states are a complete mystery to people outside of the United States. So what I want to do is, this will be a series, and we're going to do alphabetical order. I should probably have gone in acceptance order, as in the states as they were accepted into the United States, but we'll do it this way because we'll do it this way. Anyway, if you know more than just these 4, way to go. If you don't, the thing is that New York and California, those two are big because of the movies. A lot of times, if you want to set a movie in a big city, you go for New York, which is in the state of New York. So people outside of the United States, they know about New York. Plus, if you're coming into the United States, a lot of times you will fly in. If you're coming from Europe, you'll fly into the New York. Into New York City, into the New York airport. If you're coming from the other side of the world, you'll probably come into California. And then Nevada, as I said before, it has Las Vegas. So casinos and nightclubs, that kind of stuff, that's pretty big. And then obviously Hawaii is kind of our tourist destination. Especially, you know, here in the United States, it's often a dream that people have that they'll one day go to Hawaii. Anyway, so the first state we're going to start with is Alabama. Now, you may be wondering what is with that red X. Well, that red X, that's the flag of the state of Alabama. It's a white flag with a red X on it. The capital of Alabama is Montgomery. So that's the capital of the state. Alabama has a population of 5.04 million people. So quite a lot of people living there. By no means the most populous state. I think California may be our most populous state, but we'll get to that. There are some nicknames for Alabama. It is sometimes called the Yellowhammer State. Yellowhammer is the state bird. I didn't know about that. Heart of Dixie. I didn't know about that. That's one of the nicknames for Alabama. And the Cotton State. Cotton has traditionally been a large part of the economy in Alabama through the early years of colonization and through the Civil War era and then on into the modern age. Cotton has been a huge part of the Alabama economy, so it is called the Cotton State. Alabama was the 22nd state admitted to the Union, and it was admitted on December 14th, 1819. So it's been a state for quite some time. And we're starting with Alabama because it's first in the alphabet, 22nd in acceptance into the United States. A little bit of history. We're not going to go into a lot of history on any of these states. We're going to mostly talk about current climate, current tourist and famous things that come from that particular state. So starting with Alabama, there's a little bit of history behind it. It was first claimed by the Spanish. Obviously, excluding the indigenous people that were in the area at the time, the territory that would become Alabama was first claimed by the Spanish. And yes, I realize that we're talking about colonialism here, but this is part of the history of the state. Good or bad, this is what happened. It was then claimed by the French, taken from the Spanish. The British then took it from the French. Their largest cities in Alabama, Huntsville is the largest city in Alabama, then Mobile. Montgomery, the state capital, is only the third largest city in Alabama, and then we have Birmingham. You may be familiar with Birmingham in England. That's where we get the name from. There are a lot of place names in the United States that come from other countries, that come from the countries that originally settled that particular area. So Montgomery, I believe, comes from the British as well. I don't know about the others. Huntsville, that's that could have a context in that it was named after someone or some other place. But anyway, moving on. The climate, the geography and climate of Alabama is basically it's set on the Gulf of Mexico. So it has an extensive waterway system, being that there are so many rivers that are feeding in to the Gulf of Mexico. And so in researching Alabama and stuff for this, I found out that it has the second largest waterway system in the United States, just because of all the rivers and things that are there in the state. It is a humid subtropical environment, not quite to the tropics yet. They're actually the only place in the United States that may have a tropical rather than a subtropical climate is Hawaii. So anyway, humid subtropical. So if you go down there, expect it to be humid, expect it to be muggy. Lots of plant and animal life, a lot of water. Some tourism. There's a lot of beaches. As I said before, it's located on the Gulf Coast. So if you're going to be going to Alabama, beaches. The thing is, as I said as well, there's an extensive waterway system in the state. So there's beaches everywhere. They may not be beaches onto the Gulf of Mexico, but a pretty extensive beach system as well in Alabama. Kind of an interesting thing that I learned about Alabama in looking this stuff up is that the Mardi Gras festival. Now, if you know about the United States, you may know that Louisiana is famous for celebrating Mardi Gras. Louisiana being one of the 50 states. And New Orleans is the city in Louisiana that's incredibly famous world over for the way it celebrates Mardi Gras. Alabama, being that it was a French territory at one point, also celebrates Mardi Gras. The thing is that Louisiana says it's the, and New Orleans say it's the home of Mardi Gras. Alabama has a pretty good shot at claiming that title, because the first Mardi Gras festival that was established in the United States was actually established in Alabama, not in Louisiana. Interesting enough. It has the oldest Mardi Gras festival in the United States. It started in actually 1703. It was a host to the first formally organized Mardi Gras parade as well in 1830. So, yeah. They're also famous for a couple other festivals, the Hangouts Music Festival and the Alabama Shakespeare Festival. Interestingly enough, it's one of the 10 largest Shakespearean festivals in the world. Yeah, in Alabama. You wouldn't think that a place in the United States, in Alabama, would have such a large Shakespearean festival. But you're probably going to find out with me as I do these that there's a lot of weird stuff like that, because the United States is full of weird stuff like that. Some top attractions, if you are going to Alabama, some of the places you might want to visit are the U.S. Space and Rocket Center, the Birmingham Zoo, and the Gulf Coast. Those are pretty much the three. There are a lot of state parks as well. Some of the more famous of those state parks are the DeSoto State Park, the Gulf State Park, and the Cathedral Caverns State Park. Now, DeSoto State Park is probably the most famous, and it is one of the most popular state parks in Alabama. It has the DeSoto Falls, not one of the biggest falls, but it's a 107-foot waterfall. Easy to reach, great place for picnicking apparently. Lots of outdoor stuff. You will find in the United States that we do like our state parks and things, and so we have a lot of them, and they are quite a great resource. We like to spend some time outdoors going to these state parks and stuff. The Gulf State Park, beach getaway, 2 miles, white sand beach, surf, swim, kayak, tons of stuff down there. There are camping accommodations as well. The Cathedral Cavern State Park, it's a large cave system, and it's one of the largest commercial cave openings in the world at 126 feet wide by 25 feet high. And that's just to get in. That's the cave to get into the caverns. There's a 45-foot stalagmite known as Goliath. It's one of the largest of its kind. And I like spelunking. Spelunking is the term for exploring caves. So I think this would be kind of cool to go visit. On the food front, now, a lot of places in the United States like to pride themselves on the uniqueness of their cuisine, or the what's the word for it? The specialties that they've come up with for that particular state. So some of the specialties that Alabama is known for are barbecue. Southern barbecue is kind of not just isolated to Alabama. It's spread across all of the South, but apparently Alabama has a white barbecue sauce. Barbecue sauce is mostly a tomato base, and so it's usually typically a red or a very dark red sauce. So this is a white barbecue sauce. Interesting. I might need to try that sometime. Fried green tomatoes, fried chicken, shrimp and grits. Grits is kind of hard to explain. It's kind of a porridge made from a grain called hominy. I think it's a grain. I have to look this up. It's a corn. Hominy is produced from dried corn kernels treated with alkali. Anyway, so basically it's a type of corn porridge. Shrimp and grits. I didn't know. I've had grits before. They were okay. This may be sacrilege, but I think that I would prefer my grits with a little bit of sugar, brown sugar, maybe a little bit of milk, make it more like an oatmeal or a cream of wheat type situation for me. The time that I had it, the person who prepared it for me fried an egg, and then cut the egg up and put it into the grits. And I don't really like eggs, so at least not like that. A couple of famous desserts that come from Alabama. We have the pecan pie. Again, this is not necessarily strictly isolated to Alabama. It is kind of a southern thing, but pecan pie. Also, they do have an official state dessert. It's called the Lane cake. Apparently it was mentioned in To Kill a Mockingbird. So, yeah. And blackberries. Blackberries are the state fruit. Moving on to people, famous people from Alabama. These are just some of the famous people from Alabama. Obviously, there's going to be more than just are on this list. Hank Williams was a famous country singer from Alabama. We have Joe Louis. Joe Louis was a boxer, and he had a career record of 68 wins and 3 losses. Helen Keller was from Alabama. If you're not familiar with Helen Keller, she was born both deaf and blind. And she was the first deaf and blind person to attend and graduate from college. So it was difficult for her to overcome these couple of difficulties. Yeah. Her teacher, Anne Sullivan, is also famous, but she isn't necessarily from, I'd have to check where she's from. I don't believe she's from Alabama, but she basically spent a lot of time with Helen Keller teaching her how to communicate And you can imagine how difficult that would be for someone who, I mean, obviously if you're deaf, you can learn sign language, and if you're blind, you can usually speak. But Helen Keller, she was blind and deaf, so it was very difficult for her to learn the communication skills that she needed to succeed in life, and she did famously. Channing Tatum, if you're not familiar with Channing Tatum, I would be surprised. He's pretty much a worldwide movie star. Magic Mike is one of the movies that he's been in. Foxcatcher, 21 Jump Street. He was in, I believe, the G.I. Joe movie. He was also in, what was that movie? He was in The Kingsman, one of the Kingsman movies, the second one, The Golden Circle. Not for very long, though. I expected him to be in that movie for much longer, considering his star power. Anyway, Mia Hamm, she is... she won 2 Olympic gold medals and was named to the National Soccer Hall of Fame. She's a very famous American soccer star. Went to play in the Women's World Cup multiple times. So yeah, she may be more famous outside the United States than inside the United States, to be honest. Evander Holyfield, heavyweight boxer, 5-time heavyweight champion. Yes, and he's the one that Mike Tyson bit off part of his ear. So, and then Courtney Cox, if you're familiar with the Friends television show, she played Monica Geller. And again, these are only some of the famous people from Alabama. There's tons more. So yeah, there you go. Hey, if you have any more questions about Alabama, I'll be sure to look them up for you. And maybe try to make heads or tails of them. If you have, as always, if you have questions, please comment down below, like and subscribe, and let me know if there's any burning questions you have about a particular state before I get to it. Next time will be the state of Alaska. So if you have any questions about Alaska, leave them down in the comments, and I'll try to make sure that I get those answered for you next time. Have fun.